Welcome to another episode of Grow Your Life, and this episode type of Inspirational People. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and today we're with my friend Nick Bryant. Nick, say hello.
Hello.
Now, is it? I don't know that I know this. Is it Nick or Nicholas? And Nick for short.
Nicholas is the
Okay.
official, but I've been Nick
Okay.
as long as I can
Cool.
remember. I don't think I've ever been Nicholas to family or friends.
Well, we originally met through the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce. There was a weekly event we both attended called Networking Gwinnett on Friday mornings, and sometimes, if we were brave enough, Thursday mornings really early. So we got to see each other weekly or whenever we would attend. You founded a company April 1st, 2006, what you call your April Fool's joke for yourself.
Yep.
That never ended.
Yep, still going.
So that was over 14 years ago. You're still running. Your company, also named after you, NickPrint, it prints everything or almost everything except for money. And you've got to focus not just on printing, but on printing pieces that are direct mailed. So you do a large amount of direct mail volume, and you work with small to medium-sized businesses. So we've known each other over the years, and from that point, we also connected over our respective stories when I shut down my company, and you told me more about your story, and you were also involved in an interesting book project.
Yep.
So, tell us about you and your story and
Okay.
anything I might have missed.
Yeah. There's kind of, two stories, but they dovetail. There's, my business life story and then my personal life story, but they connect and intersect and go back and forth.
Yeah.
I grew up in Florida, Central Florida, Crystal River, a town north of Tampa, about an hour and a half.
Okay.
And then when I graduated high school, thought I wanted to go to Bible college. I did go to Bible college. Thought I wanted to be a minister.
Yeah.
By the time
Where did you go to Bible college?
Harding University in Searcy, Arkansas, tiny little school.
Okay. I never heard of it, but yeah.
Yeah, most people will not have.
Yeah.
Those that went there, if they ever see it, they'll know, but no one else will know. But by the time I was done, I knew that I didn't want to be a minister, but yet, I've got this Bible degree, so
What do you do with it?
Yeah, and when you're halfway through a Bible degree, if you switch to something else, you're going to just extend your college life another year or two. So might as well just finish what I'm on and see what I can do. So
yeah.
Moved to Indiana after college with a group of friends from college, believers, to be a part of a church in Indiana.
Yeah.
But it was really during my college years, was reading a book. People say that, very few books actually change their lives. Some kind of inspire you or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a book that actually changed the course of my life, and it was called Revolution, the Early Church. And it just painted a completely different picture of Christianity than I'd grown up in. Was having some disillusionment at the time anyway, and that just sort of
answered it.
put feet on it. Yeah.
So real quickly, what was your perception of Christianity, and then what did the book say that had it? Tell us the contrast between those two.
Yeah. Well, for the last 1700 years, most Christianity is a group of believers with some set of beliefs that gather weekly, sometimes twice a week, hear a sermon, sing together, there's some prayers, and they go home. The level of relationship between people is minimal in most places and marginal in others. So and the picture painted in this wasn't an attendance-based thing. It was a relationship-based of lives that are connected on a grassroots level, 7 days a week, not committed to a time slot, but committed to each other. And it was just a completely different perception or picture of church really as it's practiced all over the planet.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so, continue on with your story. I interrupted you.
Okay.
So
So as far as work, I had several corporate type jobs. I worked for AT&T for a while and Bank One Mortgage, Primus Automotive, which is a division of Ford Motor Credit, but also a serial entrepreneur. I had a carpet cleaning company for 5 years. Started a vending machine company that I ran at the same time as a carpet cleaning company. I had a tutoring company for 3 years.
This was all in Indiana?
All in Indiana.
Yeah.
Was shutting the tutoring company down at the same time I was buying a house.
Okay.
Well, if you shut a company down that you own while you're buying a house, to the bank you look unemployed, which you technically are. So I had a friend that worked at a printing company. He said, "Hey, we just lost a customer service rep. You want to come here?" So, I didn't necessarily view it as a long-term move. I
Yeah.
just went there because I was buying a house and needed a W-2 statement, needed a
Now, were you
paycheck.
single at the time?
No, I was married.
Yeah.
I don't know if I had, would have had a child or two by then.
Okay.
But that was 25 years ago or so.
Yeah.
So went to work at a printing company. I've been in printing ever since. About again 14 years ago, I guess. I was about to take a job with another printing company because I networked for my business, chambers of commerce, that type of thing. I was running into opportunities that weren't a good fit for the current printer. And he said, how about you just broker the things you want to do somewhere that don't fit us, still bring us everything that does fit us, and launch your own business. So they launched me in business within 24 hours. I didn't go to work for the other printing company. They picked the name NickPrint Inc. I didn't even pick it.
Yeah.
I had a logo by the end of the day. How's this? I said, it's fine. So for the first year and a half, my office was in their building still. And so I would wear the printing hat for their company when I dealt with house accounts. And, as I went out networking, I'd build my own book of business gradually. So without that, I'm not sure I could have ever got started, just brand new with a family with no book of business and, get started. So that they just allowed me to transition, and it was awesome.
That's pretty generous way to do it. So for sure.
Yeah.
And I guess
he's retired now, the owner of that company, but he's a fun story all by himself. But
yeah, well, what was it that you went from serial entrepreneur to kind of picking one focus and just sticking with it?
Yeah, well, I had 11 years in business and printing, 5 of that in sales. Mm-hmm. So I kind of knew the business, and it sort of fit me. Like carpet cleaning, which I did for 5 years, is great. But, as a 50-year-old, do you want to be lugging equipment up and down stairs, moving heavy furniture? As a 20-year-old, it's great, or 25-year-old. As a 50-year-old, 60-year-old, it doesn't age well unless you've got a fleet of people. So printing sales, printing management ages well. Though boxes of paper are heavy too, so I haven't got away from the lifting. But
yeah, it's funny. So let's kind of take a step back. We're 6 months into a pandemic. It's hit businesses and people in a variety of ways. There's the health aspect, the economic, there's the social unrest that's come out, and issues in our society. How are you looking at this, and how would you advise us to frame it and to engage with it?
Yeah, there's kind of 2 different hats you can look at it with. One is just the business hat. And from a strictly business point of view, I'd recommend people stay cash heavy. Don't overextend yourself, debt wise or whatever, because the future is very uncertain still. And then take advantage of the verticals that are doing well. For us, it's been real estate and technology that have still been strong during the pandemic. So we do a lot of printing for those groups. On the personal side, it's my conviction that Jesus holds everything together. And that things fall apart kind of when he decides to let go a little bit. So to kind of let people see, who they are on their own. And I think that's kind of been happening for the last 6 months. I don't think the pandemic's an accident. God doesn't have accidents. And the chaos that's ensuing, both on the right and on the left, the panic, the fear, the overreactions, it's all part of, I think, God's effort to get our attention. And that'll work for some people, and it won't work for other people. But there's a verse that says, I think it may be Matthew 24, that ethnic group will fight against ethnic group in the gospel of the kingdom. So it's usually translated nations, but it's actually ethnos, which is ethnic group. So Jesus prophesied 2,000 years ago that racial tension was a sign of the end times. But the gospel of the kingdom, not just the gospel of Jesus, but the kingdom, the relationship piece, would go into every nation, and then the end would come. So, I think a lot of it's preparatory to the end of the age, really.
Yeah. Well, and even if it's not the end of the age, it could be a end of a season in our age, right? So
I heard a guy say once, this may not be the last generation, but it's my last generation.
Yeah.
I don't have one after this.
My end times will come because I will die, right? So,
exactly.
And nations fall and rise all throughout history. So,
exactly.
But I guess, thinking of that, what comes to my mind is the idea of the concept of standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And so often we can take that for granted, that our success or our flourishing or our health or whatever it might be, even just our mental acuity, just be able to
Yeah,
think straight, um,
absolutely.
is dependent on so many complex things underneath that you take those away and things get dicey. So I definitely agree with you in terms of, I think this is a season for us to recognize our dependencies and
Mm,
also the source of them as well as appreciation of them. And it also is an opportunity to identify cracks and broken areas that do need to
yeah.
be addressed. So I guess on that note, one of the things that I think about and talk about and write about on my side is this idea of living better, working smarter. And so when you think about living better, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, it's hard for me to conceptualize living better without that meaning relationships on some level, whether
Mhm.
that's business relationships or personal,
Yeah.
spiritual relationships, but authentic, real relationships, not just ships passing in the night, but there's some sort of connection between people. And living
And so
better to
how would
me, that's getting better.
Mhm.
So
So how would you differentiate a ships passing in the night relationship versus a deeper connection?
yeah. The ability to be honest and straight with each other. Like if you're spending much time with anybody on a regular basis, they're going to
Yeah.
see your warts and you're going to see theirs. And you'll either just live as ostriches with your head in the sand, hear no evil, see no evil, or you'll talk about things. Hey, when you just
Mm,
said that to your wife, you seemed a little tense. Is everything okay? And it's
yeah.
those sorts of things. Again, not on the business side necessarily, but on the brotherhood side. Um, Business side,
And,
you can get into that some, but
mm,
not as much. You don't have that kind of invitation. But just being authentic and real, and those sort of
yeah.
relationships is what church is. And if you don't have those, I call attending a place without relationships like that simultaneous aloneness. You're
Mm,
there, there's a big crowd of people there, but you're alone and they're alone, listening to something, singing together, and going back home. So it's
yeah.
breaking that simultaneous aloneness to say, hey, let's go have lunch. Hey, let's go to the park.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever.
So what is it that, let's say someone is in that simultaneous aloneness? What do you think's driving that, and what would you encourage them to do differently to break that
Yeah,
facade?
I think most people have never had much beyond that and don't know that there's much beyond that. So
Mm.
I think, there's kind of
It's
a
like,
famine in hearing the word. They just don't know that life can have more meaning than
mhm,
that.
yeah,
Like Jesus appeared on the scene the first time and had those 12 guys he hung out with for 3 years. He was modeling something that hadn't been on earth before.
yeah,
And
yeah, and that
in much
contrast,
sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think about, just having that type of experience growing up. When I moved to Atlanta and I faced my own chaos and troubles, it was the contrast of what I had experienced before that was so great to the contrast of the chaos that I was now in, and
Mhm.
going, well, there is a better option. And so I think
Yeah.
about like the prodigal son, right? He left home and took his inheritance, and then he kind of ended up eating
Mhm.
alongside pigs
Yeah.
and trough. But because of the experience he had with his father when he was younger, he knew there was
Exactly.
a better option.
He
But
had a memory of of a different kind of life, and most people don't have that memory, but they yearn for it in little ways, like even things like Mayberry reruns, even though that's not a
mm,
picture of real
yeah, like nostalgia
kingdom
generally.
Christianity, but some of it's nostalgia, but some of it I think is in the longing for it is just a grasping after something that's more than a technology driven world that's devoid of relationship, where front porches, or you're meeting your neighbors, you're saying hi, there's interaction. With the advent of refrigerators and the automobiles, people just drive into their homes, garage door goes down, and it's just their nuclear family till they go back to work. Then they
Yeah.
work there for 30 years, get a watch, a pat on the back, and after their work life, that's gone.
Hmm.
The relationships usually don't exist much past your final day there and your box of stuff you take home.
Yeah. Even though it took place over a long period of
Yeah,
time, it
and it
never
was
went.
daily. It wasn't just you know
Hmm.
once a week for a speech. Even that doesn't have much staying power to it.
Yeah. And I guess if someone doesn't have that vision, they don't have that experience, they don't have that memory, um, what does it do to a person?
What is it? Thoreau that said most men lead lives of quiet desperation. I think
Mm,
that's what society looks like. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation and they don't know any better. Part of the reason I worked on that book project we talked about, which was a book called The Day of Small Beginnings, was to try to paint a picture for people of something beyond sitting in a pew hearing a speech once a week. What can relationships look like? What did it look like then? What can it look like now? So we use kind of a fictional story, sort of fictional, though a lot of the stories are
yeah.
real, all woven together, just to sort of whet people's appetite for what could be. And once
Yeah.
they get that vision and get that kind of, what they say in the Matrix movie that Neo had, that splinter in his mind, he
Yeah.
knew there was more than this world, but he didn't know what it was. But he was looking, he was
Hmm.
looking. So the goal of that book was to plant splinters in people's mind, to make them start looking.
Yeah. So I guess on that note, when we look at a lot of the societal unrest that's unfolding in our country now, um, I think there are both good outlets and also some really harmful ones that people are tapping into. And so if we try to fill that with a toxic version of the real thing, or with a toxic version of the genuine thing, I mean, is it just that people are hungry to feel what you're describing, and so they'll take a hostile or toxic version of that, or is there something more going on?
Yeah, I'm not even sure some of it's even a version of that. It's just they're lashing out and reacting again on both
Mhm.
sides. Both sides feel like there's a different vision of what society should look like,
Yeah.
and they're each desperately clinging to their side of it. And
Hmm.
I propose there's yet a third vision that neither one of those visions have seen,
Yeah.
though they may have tasted on little bitty levels.
Yeah.
That's just showing people what could be.
Hmm.
When Jesus was there with the 12, you have Simon the Zealot who hates the Romans and Matthew the tax collector. Those two
Mm.
guys are on opposite ends of the political spectrum. One is embracing Rome and working with them. One wants to kill everybody that's working with Rome. And
Yeah.
you don't even hear or read dialogue about them being at each other's throats all the time. Something about
Yeah.
a Jesus-centered existence made their two ideologies melt together and not be what they were before. You could call one of them
Yeah.
right, one of them left, but it disappeared into something larger than themselves.
And so how would you frame that for us, looking at society and casting a vision now? In other words, I look at our situation in our country, and even across the country, and even globally, and we need a vision, and we are lacking that, and we have a huge challenge ahead of us. And I think we need that vision to overcome the challenge, right? But
Yeah,
there's a vacuum of that vision
yeah,
amongst our elected leadership. So what would you say that vision needs to include? What does it look like? How do
yeah.
we cast that?
On the broader level to the masses, I don't know much to do beyond awakening them with things like literature, books, websites, things that have solid, good meaning that can help them. On the personal level, to me, it's a hand-to-hand, eye-to-eye, mouth-to-mouth sort of thing.
Hmm.
You can't help the whole world, but can you help the person right next to you? Can
Yeah.
you get involved with them? Can you dialogue? Whatever side they're on, can you help them find meaning in their own existence without them having to need to try to find meaning
Hmm.
in the external parts of society, again, on either side.
So don't try to change the world, just change the world you're in, is what
Exactly.
I'm.
Exactly. I mean, you can try to change the world. Again, you can write a book and tell
Yeah,
people
yeah.
it's there, but but
It's
the
harder to
world
change.
really
Yeah.
changes. Like Jesus affected the world by spending 3 years with 12 guys.
Hmm.
I think Oswald Chambers said when Jesus finished, everything he'd accomplished fit in a rowboat.
Yeah.
It wasn't, he
Yeah.
didn't have a mega place with, there were days that there were 5,000 there, but at the
Hmm.
end of the day, at the end of the 3 years, there's, you know,
Yeah.
12 guys and some ladies, you know,
Yeah.
120 in the upper room kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it grew exponentially over the time that
Exponentially.
followed. So how does business intersect with all this, and what does it mean to work smarter and wiser?
Yeah.
And
I don't know how they all relate, so I answer some of your questions from a business standpoint and some from a personal standpoint. working wiser, one of the best things I ever did is information management. Email several years ago just became such a chore. I would get 200 to 300 emails a day, 90% of which I don't need. When you network a lot and hand out your business cards a lot, you inadvertently get added to millions of things that you didn't necessarily want to be part of. But yeah, I don't want to miss an important client email in the melee of all that. So this was just a simple solution, but it was an email thing called Sane Later.
Okay.
It's
Sane.
Sane. Yeah. Like Sane Sanity.
Yeah.
Sane, or Sane Inbox, I think maybe called. There's different folders. One of the folders is called Sane Later. Sane Inbox. And it when you download it, it looks at your last 18 months of email history, and it sees who you're interacting with. Not did they write you, but did you write back?
Okay.
And it knows, okay, these are people he wants to interact with. And so all those people make it to your inbox. But if there's not been exchange between you, it gets put into a folder called Sane Later.
Oh, okay.
And then, so you can deal with the stuff that's hot with your regular people. Now I still got to look at my Sane Later, because a brand new client that I just met, their first email is going to be in there. But it still allows you to
it's a prioritization structure. And
exactly.
Yeah.
So, 20% of my emails hit my inbox, the other 80% go in this folder, and I can deal with them from there.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting.
I mean, that's a simple little.
Yeah. So that changed your communication.
Yeah, it saved me hours a day, really.
And what about it is, I mean, you're more efficient, right? But what about that makes it better for you and your business?
Well, you got more time to work on your business, but you also have more sanity. I mean, just the mental clutter of sorting through what's important, wears on you emotionally and psychologically. So,
well, I think, just thinking of that idea of just having a sane email inbox or inbox zero, or just having control over your inbox. I think that's something I struggled with for a long time. And I know a lot of people as well struggle with it. In fact, it's probably more rare that people have inbox zero than it is common. Yeah. But yet it's such a big part of our work that to not master that seems harmful. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it'll wear you out if you don't get a handle on it.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's talk about, that relationship dynamic that you mentioned. So when you think about mentoring or guiding or, helping others, the way that, as Jesus tells us to help others the way he helped us, right? To carry that legacy forward.
Yeah.
What do you think about mentoring and discipleship and leadership, and what does that mean to you and is important? And
absolutely. To me, it's just an extension of authentic relationships. Like if you've got real relationships, mentoring is going to be going on. The danger I see in sometimes when it happens is it tends to be a one-way street. I'm the mentor, you're the mentoree. And while there's truth in that, Paul, the apostle, was definitely, had more insight, knowledge, maturity than the brand new believers he's reaching out to. But even then, it should always be a two-way street. They need to be able to talk to you and not feel like the understudy all the time. So, they need to be authentic with you too.
Yeah. So I've kind of articulated a mission statement for myself, and it's kind of evolved over the years. And it used to be to teach and inspire others, and I ended up changing it to share life. And the reason I changed it is exactly what you're describing. Is I said my mission felt too one way. Yes, I do want to teach and inspire, but I also want to receive teaching and inspiration from others. And so the idea for me that share life is it's a two-way street. I'm giving and receiving.
Yeah. And here's why. I think it's 1 Corinthians 12 that talks about everybody has a different gift. Everybody has, that when you become a believer, there's a piece of Jesus that you have that I don't have. And I need that piece just as much as you need my piece.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and we need all of our pieces. None of us have it all together, but together we have it all. And I think one of the main roadblocks in modern Christianity is the only piece most people get is the pastor, the shepherd, and it may not even be his gift. Maybe he's a teacher, maybe he's neither one, but whatever he is, you're getting that gift and you're missing all the others. He's not a brother amongst brothers. He's the official weekly speechmaker. And you've got to create a context where everyone gets to experience the Jesus inside of everyone else. And when you do that, the growth and maturity becomes exponential, because the sum is greater than the parts. It actually is, I'll say it this way. Would you rather spend 3 years on a desert island with the Bible? Would you rather spend 3 years on a desert island with Jesus himself?
Yeah.
You could learn a lot of things with the book, and there'd be good things. I'm not knocking that. That's awesome. But the experience you would have in the interaction on the island with Jesus for 3 years it's not even in the same universe. By that same token, if I'm devoted to everyone because I see my need for what's deposited in them, the treasure in earthen vessels, then I receive that benefit, and the benefits to me are exponential.
Yeah.
And to them, we're all benefiting
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, because it's, I think in Christianity, culturally, Christianity can be, it can elevate the Bible to the point where you either forget about Jesus, or Jesus gets relegated to second fiddle when he's the source of what's behind that. And so,
I've heard it described as a map. Like if you're in Germany, there's a sign that says, this way to the bed and breakfast, this way to the hostel. Okay, you don't sleep at the sign. You follow the information, and you go to the place, and you check in, and you sleep there. The Bible is the sign. It's pointing which way to go, but it's not the place you lay down and rest. It's telling you where to go to lay down and rest.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things Andy Stanley's taught about that was interesting to me, was that the Bible wasn't actually composed as the Bible as we know it, the Christian Bible. And for like 300 or 400 years after Christ was here.
Yeah.
So it was an effect. It wasn't the cause, right?
Exactly.
Of Christianity.
Yeah.
And so that was really helpful. The other thing is when you talk about just the idea that we, recognize our own limitations and our needs that we cannot fill or cannot be filled by our own doings, our weaknesses, pitfalls as well. It makes me think of our American society specifically, because we're such an autonomous nation, such an independent nation of individuals kind of doing their own thing. And when things are going well, that kind of works out. But in the season of crisis, we recognize how bad we are at working together, right?
Yeah.
And how much we need each other, but yet how much we don't even trust each other to fill those needs. So that comes to mind. So anything else you would say on the topic of mentoring or teaching or guiding?
No, I think that's good.
So let's talk about stories.
Okay.
So whether they're fictional or real, they shape us. We love them. We watch them. We read them. We listen to them. So what are some stories that have shaped you as a person?
Yeah. Well, the first one that comes to mind is that book I mentioned that I read 30-something years ago, Revolution, the Early Church. And it was just a retelling in kind of story form how the first century church emerged, just the whole thing from the day of Pentecost forward. And it just painted a picture of life and connection that I was drawn to. More recently, there are a couple movies that have stuck out to me. Is a movie called The Truman Show, which I'm sure you've seen, and The Matrix. And they're very similar. They both basically people accept the world that's presented to them and don't look beyond the surface. Truman is trapped in a television set, living in existence but there's something that bothers him, something that doesn't add up, and he finally pushes the limits and goes in the boat through the storm to the edge. And then same thing in The Matrix. Neo's like, he doesn't buy the world that's been presented to him, that's handed to him, and looks beyond. And
there's a system.
Both of those are great analogies.
Yeah, because in both cases, there's a system that we're playing inside of, and there's a point when we where we mature enough to the point where we recognize that system, and then we can choose to what degree we allow that to influence us.
Yeah.
And we're not there's an aspect of it like a fate, like predestination, in the sense of like I'm on a boat floating this way, and there is some of that exists, but there is some agency that we have in that boat, right? So I don't know were those stories that resonated with you when you saw them, or were they ones that resonated with you later and then you looked back at them?
No, both those movies, I had already I was already far enough along in my progression that they were just analogies and ways to show other people what I've been trying to talk about, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But there's a line out of an A.W. Tozier book that's it's really heady in its wording. It's called The Intrusive Ubiquity of Visible Things.
Okay.
And it's really about setting your mind on things above, but the intrusive ubiquity, basically what he goes on to say is, you're supposed to set your mind, focused on things that are invisible, not the visible, not the here and now, but what's beyond. But you wake up every day and the here and now is what's in your face. You got bills, you got work, you got children crying, you've got medical issues, you've got stuff, and it's intrusive. The intrusive ubiquity means it's everywhere. The visible world is assaulting our senses, and the invisible world, not so much. Those are gentle whispers and things you gotta, catch glimpses of. And it's a priority you have to make. Tozier also said every man chooses his world. So to choose that other world is a conscious step, and you've got to look past, what's going on, and it's hard.
Yeah, and I wrote a parable called The Island Story, and there are these 4 characters that are these distractions. The shark, the clownfish, the turtle, and the swordfish, and they distract us in different ways. One is the shark is distracts us through provision and being taken care of. The clownfish distracts us through pleasure and fun. The turtle distracts us with significance and meaning. Yeah. And then the swordfish distracts us with goals and achievements. And so, it's just that same kind of
parables of the soils. You got all the soils and the rocky soil and the thorny soil and all that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So,
the modern reader.
Yeah. So, lots of, and, Jesus used all these stories and parables to connect with people. And I guess that'd be an interesting thing to ask you is, I think we're in a world or in a season or an era that, some would call it the post-truth era. I don't, even if it's true, I don't like what that means.
Yeah.
So I'm going to choose something else, or I'm going to ignore that, or whatever it is. We're sort of declining reality as it is.
Yeah.
And so
people have been saying that for a while. I think Francis Schaeffer in the 1960s said that we're living in the post-Christian era, something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, that's
and maybe it's more cyclical then.
Yeah. Or we're still just on the bottom. The roller coaster's still been going down.
The end of
we're
that.
getting close to the bottom, so maybe we go up from here.
So, but there is something about story that can pierce through that shield or that guard, to connect with the people that may shun a truth that they're not interested in or they're pushing back on. What would you say to that idea?
Oh yeah, stories help people put feet on things that they have felt. Like the book that we worked on, we would get letters from all over the world saying, I felt a certain way for a long time, but you put words on it. Like you're describing my life and you don't even know me. Like it helps people connect with what they've already felt and known.
And then with that connection, what can happen after that? What's the benefit of that connection?
Yeah, they can get a vision and they can begin to walk it out in their sphere of relationships.
Yeah.
If they want, then it's just another philosophy in their head. So
yeah, that's true.
Doesn't do them any good.
Yeah. So there's stories. The other hugely influential piece of the puzzle in terms of humanity is systems. We create them, we're shaped by them, we participate in them. What do you think about systems, and how do you use them, and how do you interact with them?
Yeah. I didn't know everything you meant by systems when I was reviewing the questions, but on the business side, I would consider things like chambers of commerce a system. That's a system for me to engage other business owners. That's different than cold calling at their door saying, hey, I'm Nick, I'm a printer. It gives you a context to build relationships in a business sense, a business community where, hey, I need a web guy. Hey, I need an insurance agent. Hey, I need this. You're all kind of coming together, and it's not selling to the room, but it's getting to know the room. So it's a system, I would think. On the personal side, there's websites, there's apps, there's things like that. I'm not sure beyond there. There's a web app that I'm on pretty much every day called Jesus Life Together. That's the name of the app, and it's free in the Apple Store. And it's got, how Oswald Chamber has that daily little thought. It's got a today page where there's something. So I read the today page. Almost first thing I do every morning is read that today page. But beyond there, there's all sorts of things on there, free music, Christian music that has some depth to it, not just sort of pop, get excited music, but music that with lyrics that make you think, and some free audio books that are on there. The book that, there's not an audio book of the one that I helped write on there, but there is, the PDF of it is on there. It's on that. You can get that from that app as well. And other books that the guys I know and the guys I don't know have written there on there. So it's a great tool. I love it. So.
Yeah, that's cool. Anything else you would say about systems, or how they've helped you, or when does a system become tyrannical? When does it become a problem system?
When you start mixing systems in a spiritual world, I think they're mostly meant for the business and civic world. There's governments and order and that kind of thing. But when it becomes ecclesiastical and there's an ecclesiastical hierarchy, I think you're headed for trouble somewhere or another.
Yeah.
Spanish Inquisitions follow.
Oh, in terms of when the state integrates with the church. When the church functions like the state, as almost a political entity, a hierarchical entity. Yeah, then it becomes vulnerable to the same corruption that.
Power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
Versus Jesus' model of, you have one teacher and you are all brothers. There's no big shots. You have one teacher, that's him, and you are all brothers. If that's kind of our baseline, we're okay. That doesn't mean there aren't gifts and those gifts aren't prominent. But
we're not superior or inferior to each other. Is I think what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah. In fact, there's a verse that says, call no man teacher, call no man father, call no man rabbi. And that's Jesus telling his people not to do this. And I don't know hardly ever a religious body on earth that ever talks about that, what that means, because they all do it. Like, here's the guy who started this saying, don't do this. Don't call people teacher or rabbi or whatever. And they all do it anyway, as if he's not in charge. So I had that same gift of teacher, but you have one teacher and you're all brothers.
And I guess what would you say is the reason he gave that? Was it simply to mitigate against our pride, or to prevent us from being corruption?
I think titles are a place to hide behind. Having the gift of teacher is great. Having everyone call me teacher, that does something to me that's unhealthy. Having the gift of teacher is wonderful, because as a piece of Jesus in the midst, as a brother amongst brothers. But anytime there's a pedestals harm the person on it, and they harm everyone else. Yeah,
and I think sometimes, even if, like to your point, if someone puts us on a pedestal, it can cause problems. And so in my journey and in my past, I've like intentionally knocked down that pedestal, my own pedestal, because I don't want people to think I'm something that I'm not. I want them to recognize that I'm just as fallible as anyone else. And
if you can articulate things well, if you're a good speaker, all of a sudden you're considered super spiritual, when your ability to articulate 1 Corinthians 13 about love doesn't mean you have any of it. It just means you're a good talker. You understand things well and you can talk, but your relationship with your wife, your relationship with your children, those are the indications of whether you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And we should judge the character of someone based on those, not how charismatic they are. And I think,
and we shouldn't damage them. Like in most settings, the guy gives his sermon, pours his heart out or whatever, goes to the back door and shakes 1,000 people's hands that pat him on the back and say, great job, great job, great job. He doesn't need that. That's unhealthy for him. He needs to be a brother amongst brothers, because that's going to damage him. And I think a lot of these religious leaders that have fallen in the media have fallen because they're susceptible to that pedestal, and it's going to eat them from the inside out eventually.
Yeah. And then there's a facade that they feel at least some of them feel they have to maintain, and they maintain it at all costs, which then leads to other issues and secrets, and all those gets complicated.
They can't be honest with their failings that day, with snapping at their wife or whatever, because they're the grand poobah. They're the
and that's why I think it's important, like from the beginning, in terms of being a leader or leading others, to to be vulnerable that way from the beginning. Say, hey, I've
Lead in
screwed up.
vulnerability too.
Yeah, that way I don't set a precedent that I've been amazing and now I've screwed up and I can't tell anyone because I've told everyone how amazing I am.
Yeah.
So, well, what else would you say? Anything that you wanted to share that we didn't get to or that we missed?
I've done most of it. Again, that app is free. Jesus Life Together. You can get it on the Apple Store. I don't know if there's other Google Play stores. I don't know. I don't even know what all the stores are out there.
Yeah.
But I know it's on the Apple Store, and I think others. But it's a wonderful app. So
Okay. Now,
goes beyond what I have.
Yeah. When you read, so like the Bible or other things, do you tend to read it physically or digitally? I mean, the app, you obviously read those digitally, but in terms of the actual Bible, do you do one or the other?
More audibly than anything else.
Okay.
I'm in the car a lot, so I do a lot of books on tape or listen to the Bible on tape. So I probably hear a lot more than I physically
Okay.
read.
Yeah.
One of the best books of the last few years was Dietrich Bonhoeffer's biography by Eric Metaxas. Just a phenomenal book, and it parallels. It's basically he's a Christian leader in Germany as Hitler comes to power. So you kind of see the whole thing, and then the chaos and all of that. It's eerily similar to our day, and 90% of what was Christian in Germany, from Luther's heritage and everything, just collapses under the weight of, Nazi Germany. It doesn't stand the test of time because it doesn't have any root, and 90% of it's gone. But you kind of see Dietrich and others push through it in a way that's incredibly inspirational.
So essentially, the bad stuff is purged and the good stuff stood the test of time. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it was purged, actually, literally.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
although that's not, I guess, not
a lot
always.
of them went along with it and, became part of Hitler's church. Hitler's allowed to be, it can still be Christianity as long as you worship me too.
Yeah.
Okay, we will. So,
well, and that's, right. We're going back to, like Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? You can keep doing that, but, and then it kind of flipped. But any parting words of wisdom that you would share with us before we wrap up here?
Start today. Make one relationship more authentic than it was yesterday. Be real with somebody, whether that's opening up your heart, whether that's talking to them about something that's been troubling you. Something in a business relationship seems a little shady or something. Just be real and open and honest. Not coming down on somebody and beating them up, but being authentic, being real.
Yeah.
Truth is aletheia, reality. What's real. Talk about what's real.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, how can people connect with you? Your business, you as a person on social media, your book?
LinkedIn is really the only thing I'm on. I'm not really a Facebook guy. I'm more of a B2B guy. So LinkedIn kind of fits that mold better.
Yeah.
And it fits my personality better. Facebook, I don't care what your cat had for dinner.
Yeah.
or the political rantings and ravings.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's either got nonsense or hatred. It's kind of so I like.
And then do you have a website that you recommend?
NickPrint.com, www.nickprint.com, and then you Google NickPrint and Nick Bryant or put that in LinkedIn, you'll find me there too.
Okay, cool. Anything else you want to mention before we wrap up here?
Thanks for your time. Enjoy talking with you.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your life, and appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Jason.